Good afternoon and welcome everyone. I'm Councillor Susie Horton. I'm the Cabinet Member for Children, Families and Education. Please be assured that we put appropriate cleansing and social distancing measures in place to ensure that this meeting is undertaken in a COVID secure manner. Can I please ask members to remain seated throughout the duration of the meeting and to wear a face covering unless seated. A little bit of housekeeping, same as normal. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and go down by the stairways. Do not attempt to use the lifts and assemble at Queen Victoria's statue in the Guildhall. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust's fire marshal regulations, please sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. May I draw everyone's attention to the fact that this meeting will be live streamed and everyone speaking will be on camera. Okay, please can everyone use their microphones. Remember to switch them off when they have finished. I'm going to do introductions starting here.
Councillor Jeanette Smith, spokesperson for PPP on this committee.
Welcome.
Councillor Terry Norton, and I'm the Conservative spokesperson.
Welcome.
Judith Smythe, Councillor of St Jude's Ward and Labour.
Thank you, Judith.
I'm Angela Mann. I'm Finance Manager for Children, Families and Education.
Thank you, Angela.
Hi, Mike Stoneman. I'm Deputy Director, Education.
Councillor Madge with the Paulsgrove Ward. Councillor Scott Pater Harris, Hillsey Ward.
You're most welcome to this meeting. Okay, this actually is, declarations of interest. My usual one. I am the Vice Chair Governors at Craneswater Junior School.
My normal one, I'm in paid employment for Unison in Hampshire branch, but there's nothing on the agenda that should preclude me from taking part in the meeting.
My usual one, I am employed at Mayfield School, albeit through an external agency.
None.
No others. Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. So we're going to go on to it's a single item, agenda item, and I just before we start, I just wanted to give a little bit of context around this, that this decision on this budget is tied up with a lot of variables. When the government guidance comes out, a consultation period, timing for it to go through Schools Forum, this meeting, and with the Christmas holidays in between. So it's quite a tricky timeline. And some years it works out quite smoothly in the sense that Schools Forum are really happy with the recommendations. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for doing that. So sometimes that timeline, although it's quite tight and complicated, works very smoothly. But on occasion, Schools Forum have raised some issues which involve recommending to me a change in the original proposal, and that's what's happened here. So we have a paper that has come through which will amend the original recommendations. And just to say for clarity that I attended the first half of the Schools Forum as an observer, so I am reasonably well rehearsed with where the conversation was going, and I caught up with officers afterwards to get the rest of the conversation.
I was at Schools Forum and I've got every sympathy with this. I think it was very important. I'd also like to draw attention to the fact that it appears that the DSG doesn't take into account the enormous increases in the fuel bills that all schools will face, and that what appears kind of reasonable probably will turn out to be rather difficult for them all, and I just would like to put that on record, Chair.
Thank you very much. What I'll do is I'll let Angela talk us through the paper so we know what we're talking about, but I just wanted to give that context before she started. Thank you.
Thank you. So hopefully everybody's had a chance to look through the paper and the amendment that came out yesterday. The report follows an earlier report which detailed the methodology of the schools budgets and the central schools support block. With regards to the early years DSG, the report was noting that despite the increase in hourly rates, the indicative funding for the council has reduced due to the number of actual hours that is monitored by census information that's returned. And it could reduce further depending on the January 2022 census that we don't know the results for yet. The report included the information on the consultation that Councillor Horton referred to, and with regard to the increase in the hourly rate and how we were proposing to distribute that. And as already been mentioned, this was discussed at Schools Forum last week, and the additional costs that the sector of early years was facing were raised, and therefore the separate amendment has been put forward to change Table 1. With regards to the high needs block budgets, we're proposing the inflationary rate on the element 3 elements, and the report also details the changes to the projected number of specialist places that we're needing and the associated budgets. The report also details the 3-year forecast that we have completed, and it shows that even if there isn't a change in the funding for the following 2 years, and the DSG carry forward would be sufficient to cover any short-term deficit. The table in 8.4 that relates to the carry forward also shows that we've allowed a 1% contingency for in-year pressures, but that does still leave 1.8 million of carry forward unallocated for other one-off items and projects that people might want to put forward that will help the pupils and students in the city. New for 22-23 is the supplementary funding, and in particular the high needs one. We're still waiting for the guidance on how this is to be distributed, but we're anticipating that we'll be distributing an amount per commission place for in-city places, and for out of city it would be based on actual places. Once the ESFA have clarified their guidance, we would propose to look at the different options to ascertain the value and agree that approach with our special schools and alternative provision settings, and then only come back with options if there isn't a clear agreement. Are there any questions in relation to the report?
Thank you, Angela. Just before I go to any other questions, I just wanted to say something about the early years situation. I'm fully followed the arguments for all the valid reasons, and I completely accept it. I think it's a really sensible amendment. I think we are aware of the numbers and waiting, obviously, we're always waiting on the latest census, so it's a complicated kind of timeline around that. And also, obviously, aware how challenging it is, given the comment that Councillor Smythe said around rising costs and viability issues, and we track that very closely. I'd already, in principle, raised the idea that we do what we did last year if we were in a position where we were able to give some of that carry forward back in the form of grants. So that was already sort of in the wings, but I think the arguments that were put forward were very compelling around actually going for the 1p increase. And when it comes to contingency, it's probably worth saying that there is always this balance between what seems like a lot of money, but actually how quickly that can go, and we need to keep ourselves safe financially to be able to respond to unplanned situations across our schools and early years settings. Councillor Smythe.
I'm cautious about using contingencies as well, but I think in this case it was important. I think we're dealing with settings that sometimes are very small businesses, whereas a big school, a secondary school, could probably absorb this, and they're more likely to have reserves and so forth if it had happened in that sector. Second of all, early years is so very important for children's development. Good quality early years education is the key to success, particularly for children from poorer backgrounds or where the home learning environment isn't very good. And the other thing, of course, is that some of these children will have had quite a difficult time over COVID and will need the sort of help with speech and language that only a good early years setting can provide. So I think it's really a good thing that I hope, are going to agree to this. You're going to agree to this and sign it off, please. Because Absolutely. You've got my backing.
Thank you. yes, agree with all those points. Councillor
You know, I agree with what Councillor Smythe said there, which I think is why it was so important that schools were reopened, and we pushed to have schools reopened sooner rather than later. The only thing I've got with it is the nature of an amendment coming forward 24 hours before a meeting. Now, I was at Schools Forum, so I understand it. It's not contentious and not worth pushing forward, but I do worry from a public scrutiny perspective if we've got something that's coming forward 24 hours before a meeting. Has it really had time to be scrutinised? I'm not sure that too many people watch this meeting with, close eyes, so not worth pushing forward, but in future I think 24 hours is probably quite late.
Yeah, and as I said, I think that's a fair point, and it doesn't happen very often, but actually we will always try and avoid that, but we are, as I say, the start point is actually not in our hands, and sometimes there's just a whole series of things that have to happen at a very short space of time, but I absolutely take your point.
I have a question on 6.20, which is a hospital medical education. Is there any background information to show that long COVID within children might be an issue, and whether that budget of 660 is enough to alleviate that problem? It may be too early to say that, but it's becoming a real issue about long COVID.
I don't know if Mike can give any detail.
Well, as you say, it's too early to say really. It's something we'll watch. I don't know it's had much of an impact at the moment on that particular provision in terms of the pupils that currently benefit from that. But yeah, I accept it could have an impact in the future. But we'll have to just monitor that one as we go along.
I think it's a really good question. I'm on the long COVID working group, this is something that I feel very passionately about, as you know, and I am really happy to update you if we get any indication of that demand being made on that service particularly because of long COVID.
Yeah, I mean, what are the numbers like on long COVID for young people? I don't know anything about the numbers on that. Are they significant?
It's a really difficult one. It's so complex because of the way things are diagnosed. It's one of those things that is subject to a series of symptoms being decided on, that is a label that's given to it. I think it's too early to tell at the moment. That it's more anecdotal, and I don't think it's something that we necessarily would know about from a health perspective unless it became an educational issue. And that's, I think, as Mike has said, that I don't think we've got any robust information on that to date.
But we are seeing an increase in mental health due to times of COVID and anxiety about being in school and the workplace and getting back into routine and things like that. Is that?
Yeah, I think so, but I'm not too sure that I would call that long COVID.
No, I think connected to.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about grey areas here, aren't we? I think everyone in this room is completely on board with the fact that the pandemic has had a significant impact on children in the city. Some of that will be reflected in learning outcomes. Some of that will be reflected in mental health. But it comes to a point where it's not a cause and effect thing. It's just a situational thing. And I think as long as we have the right approaches to dealing with any individual challenges, I think that's the best way we can cope with as we say, unprecedented times. Any other comments or questions? In which case, I will go to the amended recommendation. So I'll go through them one by one. So I'm approving the initial determination of the school's budget for 2022-23 as set out in Appendix 1, except the section relating to early years. I'm approving the 2022-23 Special School Inclusion Centre and Alternative Provision Places as set out in Appendix 2. I'm approving the 2022-23 Element 3 top-up values for special schools, inclusion centres, alternative provision settings and mainstream schools as set out in Appendix 3. And I am approving the early years budget as set out in the amended Table 1 and Appendix 1 to add 1 pence to the hourly rate and reduce the contingency on 3 and 4-year-olds only following feedback received from the Schools Forum at its meeting on the 9th of February 2022. approving the proposal that any carry forward of balances from 21 to 22 to be used to assist with the revenue costs associated with the planned increase in high needs places, the continued introduction of the funding reform changes, and fund any potential financial pressures arising during 2022-23. And finally, approve the approach to distribute the supplementary funding through agreement with special schools and alternative provision settings as set out in section 9. And that brings us to the end of the meeting. Any other business? So you jumped in quickly, Councillor Smythe.
I just wanted to thank all the staff involved in having to do this rather quickly. And perhaps next year a reminder could be sent out to the Schools Forum to respond, because I gather they were given the opportunity to comment on this and they failed to do so. You can understand it's near Christmas, it's difficult, but a little reminder next year that really to do it when they were asked to get involved and make comments would have made your life easier, wouldn't it? And thank you for all the extra work it put you through.
Mike.
Do we have a chair yet? Do we have a Schools Forum chair yet? Do we know?
Yeah, I can update on that. Just on the consultation, I mean, the issue is with the early years sector, so we went out to consultation, but obviously the timescales were not convenient, and we got a very limited response. Had we got the sort of response we had at Schools Forum, we would have had a bit more time to obviously prepare something, and wouldn't have been doing it at this kind of speed.
I was suggesting a bit of reminder would be helpful. I think that would be...
Yeah, we can certainly try and do that. I mean, we'll see what the timescales are this year, but yeah, we'll try and do that. Just on the Schools Forum membership, so yes, as you know, David Jeeves is stepping down as chair. Dave Jones has agreed to take on the chair of Schools Forum, and we have also identified a vice chair, and hopefully that will be ratified at the next Schools Forum meeting. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And thank you to officers for all that hard work on this. And actually, I think what it demonstrates for me is the importance of Schools Forum, because it's not a forum where things are just nodded through. There's really good, robust challenge and conversations, and some meetings aren't like that, but actually I think it proved its worth in that last meeting. Yeah, and it was really good, and it's good for me to observe, so I can hear the kind of views of people. I think the right thing was done. So thank you very much to everyone for coming to today's meeting, and have a good evening.